Greetings and a warm welcome to all the panelists and participants to the launch event of Indo-Pacific Civil Society Forum. Before we dive into the session, there are few in-house announcements. The launch will begin with the introductory remarks from Mr. Bipul Chatterjee, Executive Director of CUTS International, followed by a digital launch of the forum. Then we have prominent panelists who have joined us today from across the Indo-Pacific region, Mr. Fujisaki, former ambassador and current president of NPI, Mr. Chen, Senior Economist and Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, and Mr. Ezell, Vice President of Global Innovation Policy at Information Technology and Innovation Foundation. Welcome you all. After their remarks, the floor will be open for discussion, followed by a vote of thanks. We encourage all members of the panel to keep their cameras on during the event, and please keep your microphones on mute unless you are speaking. This event is being recorded to be released on different platforms later. All participants are encouraged to actively engage in the session. Please post your questions with your name and affiliation to the chat box option directed at the moderator or me. We are also joined by Ms. Elizabeth Abbott, Senior Advisor, Australian High Commission. Once again, welcome you all. Now I invite Mr. Bipul Chatterjee for introductory remarks. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Sandra. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, depending on your location. On behalf of CUTS International, let me welcome all of you to this launch event, launch program of an initiative which we have just started. It's called Indo-Pacific Civil Society Forum. As you know, there are several developments which are taking place in this region. Let me take you back and recall that immediately after the global financial crisis of 2008-9, several experts, they opined that in this century, there are going to be two hotspots in every sense of that term in this world. One is Indo-Pacific region, and the other is Inner Asia, not just Central Asia, but much more extended part of that region. Now, as we see today, we are just going to enter the last quarter of 2022, those predictions have come true. The kind of developments which are taking place in this region, I'm talking about Indo-Pacific region, given the context of today's program, in every sense of the term, security, both traditional and non-traditional, the region is facing several challenges. At the same time, we have to also keep in mind that a number of initiatives are being taken up. Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity is one such initiative. Around that, we also witness there are initiatives on the part of the private sector, there are initiatives on the part of the media and such players. But one area where we see that there is a lot of vacuum is that civil society organizations of this region are yet to come together to exchange information, exchange knowledge. Ultimately, as we know, that whatever, given these challenges, and the development that their impacts is going to be felt by the people on the ground. And it is the civil society organizations, community-based organizations, who are better placed to, to see that how those developments are impacting people on the ground. And they are also better placed to take forward information from the ground to the higher level, to the policy level in particular. So that is the idea behind the launch of these initiatives. We have about 20 members so far, and I'm sure that over time it's going to grow. So today we are having this launch program, and the idea is also to challenge one particular notion. Since we are talking about Indo-Pacific region, there is another notion which is prevalent in this region, that Asia is for the Asians only. We don't believe, I don't believe in that notion. I understand that there are several other players, not necessarily from the Asian region, who have stakes and who have a legitimate role to play in the developments of this region without diluting. Let me emphasize on this point, without diluting the role of the ASEAN Institute. I'm talking about Association of Southeast Asian Nations, diluting their centrality, central role in this region. So, as I said before, there are several organizations who have joined together, and as a beginning, we have started this initiative by producing a quarterly newsletter. We have come out with the first issue. We have disseminated that. The second issue is going to be due by mid-October. So that's how we look at it. I mean, to build it up in a step-by-step manner, and going forward, we intend to do thematic research and also a thematic annual conference of members to exchange information, to exchange knowledge on specific developments which are taking place in this region. And therefore, to conclude my opening remarks, this is a platform for free-flowing interactions, discussions, and collaborations between stakeholders in the region, including CSOs, government organizations, think tanks, and others. And our intention is to institutionalize it over time by sharing the lessons and experiences gained by CSOs working in individual countries of this region. So with that, let me stop here and let's get into the panel discussion. We have an excellent set of speakers. Unfortunately, Mr. Tony Church, who is the president and chairman of Australian Risk Policy Institute. I just got the message that there is some emergency situation at his home, so he's unable to join us. But otherwise, we have an excellent panel. Let me first request Mr. Ichiro Fujisaki, who is the president of Nakasone Peace Institute in Tokyo, Japan, for his initial thoughts on this subject, on various developments which are taking place in the Indo-Pacific region. So over to you, Mr. Ichiro, and I would request you to speak for about 12 to 14 minutes. Thank you, and over to you. You have to unmute yourself. Can somebody do that?
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Ichiro Fujisaki from Tokyo. Two things. I'm not speaking on behalf of government. I'm speaking my thinking. Two, I'm not going to be speaking 12 to 14 minutes. I think I can speak within 5 minutes. This is something I have learned in my 40 years of government. If you speak 5 minutes, you'll get people to listen to you. If you speak 14 minutes, people will go away. So I'll be very short. Now, I'll be speaking two parts. One is a sketch. I'm talking about India-Japan relations. And I'll be talking about first, sketch of the present relations. Second part, I will be speaking how it should be. The first part, India-Japan relations have been really changing drastically in the last few years. I have been a deputy foreign minister about 20 years ago, and I was commuting to India to initiate high-speed railroad and things like that, but it didn't move. Now it's really so quick. And now, for example, in 5 years, we have agreed that Japanese government and private would look at investment into India about 5 trillion yen. Huge money. It's about 5% of Japanese annual government budget. High-level visits between leaders. That's going to take place every year, taking turns. We have decided to work on UN Security Council reform. We think after Russian invasion to Ukraine, UN is not functioning, and this is the time to look at the Security Council reform. Now, next year is important because India is host of G20, Japan is host of G7. Both countries are hosting important international meetings, and there's lots where we can cooperate. The leaders have agreed to work on humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. It's a very important area. And also we have discussed to work on ransomware, how to cope with cyber and ransomware intrusions. This is the rough sketch. And also we have to be thinking, as you rightly said, Asia is not only for Asians, there are stakeholders. We have to think how we should cope with Russia. Of course, the nuance between India and Japan, there are differences. How to cope with China, that's different as well. India is part of Shanghai cooperative group and cooperation, and Japan is not. How to deal with the United States. This is very different as well. We have a alliance with the United States where India has no alliance. So it's different. Now, what we have to, I'll go into the second part. Second part is how India-Japan relations should be. What we have to be very careful is that there are two models. One put basis on money, relations with China. Thirdly, on leaders' relations, leaders' chemistry. I call it MCL, money, China, and leaders. That's what we call strategic partnership. The second model puts more on democracy, value of democracy, technology, and heart-to-heart relations between people, not leaders only, but people. What we have, and I call it fundamental relations. A model is US-Japan relations. Japan has democracy together, technology sharing, and people's relations. India and Japan relations has to go to that model of fundamental relations, not strategic, based only on money, leaders, and relations with China. This is to give you a food for thought to chew on, but let's have the recognition that this is watershed now. We can go to this strategic partnership type where money, China, leaders relations counts. But other model of fundamental, I repeat, democracy, technology, and people to people. Let's go to that model rather than the first one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ichiro, for placing your thoughts on the table. And I think you have made a very important point that bilateral relationships are actually the constructive pillars for much larger regional relationship or regional partnership, which is evolving. There will be several ups and downs as we go from here, as we evolve. but we have to keep in mind certain things, and I'm glad that you underlined towards the end, you underlined the value of democracy. And that is what we also value very much. And that is what I think is going to bind us together. With that, let me now move over to Dr. Lurong Chen, senior economist at the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia in Jakarta, Indonesia. And Dr. Chen, while we are very much looking forward to hear from you, in your address, if you can also elaborate a little bit about the importance of ASEAN's centrality for the development, for peace, security, stability, and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific region, that would be great. Over to you, Dr. Rong Chen.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. And then congratulations for launch for this very important initiative. As you mentioned, that now we are facing a very challenging global situation, from technology progress, from political instability, from security, a lot of issues. And then Indo-Pacific is probably one of the highlight spot in the world screen. So I think this initiative is very timely. Before I put my comments, I also want to make a statement that I'm from ASEAN, and I'm working on ASEAN economic and integration issues. But what I share here is only my personal observation and opinion, not represent my institute or any ASEAN member states. So when I read this brief of the forum, I really appreciate you put this ASEAN centrality layer. I think this is the very key to understand ASEAN's interests and motivation, either economically or politically or related to any geopolitical security issues. But when we look at this ASEAN centrality, there's actually two preconditions that this ASEAN centrality makes sense only in a kind of globalization environment. As we know that the reason ASEAN want to highlight this ASEAN centrality in all these international affairs, that ASEAN want to develop faster. Some ASEAN countries in this middle income trap, they want to jump out of the middle income trap. Now we are facing a new digital technology revolution, want to grasp the opportunity to better hook on the global value chain so the country can develop faster. And again, this economic benefit can also promote or accelerate the region's development in other aspects, including democracy, including human rights, and then also this related issue is the inclusiveness. So make sure that everyone can really benefit from this development, not just the nation level, but for all the individual level. That's something I fully agree with Mr. Fujisaki said. So need to make sure that everyone can benefit from that. That's the reason related to ASEAN centrality, there's another thing that not let anyone behind, so to be inclusive. Another related issue is open regionalism. So ASEAN always keep in mind that, yes, we try to promote regional integration to have a more integrated market. So we have kind of more harmonized environment so everyone can work together. We can solve problems by talking, by communicating, by understanding each other better. But we want to keep this regional integration program open. So people who are supportive, who are friendly, we are welcome to join them. Also, this open regionalism also means that countries are open-minded to new ideas, new initiatives, as well as they can really contribute the regional prosperity, which we welcome it. So in related to this Indo-Pacific, I think this is actually still something quite new to us. We still observe what's going on, but apparently, as I said, that its importance is no doubt. But here, what we concern here, personally, I'm concerned here is the mindset behind the mindset that's driving this Indo-Pacific partnership. So that would make a big difference. For example, if this mindset is that this Indo-Pacific partnership, we try to support this open and inclusive development by kind of promote a rule-based world economy system. So as far as everyone can learn, want to follow these rules, you are welcome to join this system. And in this partnership, people also learn from each other, learn from international commitment to promote their domestic reform. This is very kind of a very positive or very kind of a thinking, forward-looking thinking that the door is open. As far as you are willing to learn, as far as you are willing to change and reform, we welcome you. And this is a good thing. But on the other hand, what it concerns that, of course, we want that have a system that makes sure that it's fair to everyone, but we don't go to that direction that this partnership will kind of add something like the iron curtain to something like the Cold War. That is, you need to make choice. You stand this group or you stand on that group, make a choice. Then it kind of competition. You are either my team or his team. This is probably not a thing that of any country's interest, because especially for ASEAN countries, development is the foundation of everything. Yeah, we can talk about the reform. We can talk about the democracy. We talk about the regional stability, security, but all need to relate is that make sure everyone can benefit from that. So how can normal people benefit from that? I cannot see other answer than we keep develop faster and healthy or more substantial. Not just look at economic data, of course, but also look at the human skills, look at the energy issue, look at that how people can better adopt new technology. All this only comprehensive one. So as far as we keep it open and inclusive, it's definitely a good thing. And then to this aspect, I think this civil society forum will be very important. We will kind of have a kind of a collaboration to have a joint voice to kind of reflect what normal people, what the majority wants, and then have our suggestion. So yeah, so this is pretty much what I'm thinking about it. So when we talk about ASEAN centrality, let's keep in mind one thing is that make this Indo-Pacific partnership or contribute to the inclusiveness. So and also to kind of a people-to-people connection and also normal people's development. I think I will just start with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Luong Chen. I think among various points that you have emphasized or underlined, like our previous speaker, Mr. Ichiro, you have also underlined the importance of people-to-people connect. Now, that construct is also undergoing several interesting developments. And many of those developments are actually technology enabled. It's nowadays so easy to connect with each other, even with people in non-friendly countries over WhatsApp, right? You can't really stop people from connecting with each other. Now, these technology-enabled innovations are already changing our lives in a big way. They are going to accelerate changes which were supposed to happen over a period of time, let's say 8 to 10 years. Those several changes which we have seen just now as a result of the pandemic, things are changing so fast within a year or so. So sometimes it is difficult to keep pace. While we all understand that, let's take example, that new technology, 5G, or after that 6G, they are going to revolutionize, if I may use that word, the delivery of healthcare services, delivery of education services, and various other services. So how are they then going to address the other important challenge that the world is facing, which is inequality? And by inequality, I mean not just income inequality, but more in terms of access to opportunities. which is, I think, at the root of that problem. So it is important for us to understand that how access to opportunities can be better served through technology-enabled innovations. And I think there is no other person than Stephen, who is the Vice President of Global Innovation Policy at the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation. And they also have a network which is called Global Technology and Innovation Platform Action, something like that. Sorry, if Stephen, I'm unable to recall that correctly. But Stephen, I think, is rightly placed to tell us about all these changes, their implications, and how it is going to reinforce this important point which has emerged so far in this discussion of people-to-people contact. Over to you, Stephen.
Well, good day, Bipul and Sandra. Thank you to CUTS International for the invitation. And congratulations to you all on the launch of the Indo-Pacific Civil Society Forum. I think it's a really fantastic and important initiative to shape the contours of engagement and trade throughout the region. So I'm Stephen Ezell. I'm the Vice President of Global Innovation Policy at the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, ITIF. We are a Washington, D.C. based science, technology, economic, and trade policy think tank. We've been ranked the world's leading think tank in those categories by the University of Pennsylvania Global Go-To Think Tank Index for the past 3 years running. And we work on advocating for public policies, the laws and administrative actions that drive innovation-based economic growth in the United States and in countries around the world. So our goal is really to be advocates for a global economy that maximizes the output of innovation-based industries for the benefit of humanity. And obviously, the Indo-Pacific region is so important to global economy, global society. It accounts for 40% of global GDP. It's expected to contribute the majority of global economic growth over the next 30 years. It's home to 60% of the world's population. So how economic and innovation and trade policy unfolds in this region will really define how the global economy is shaped in the decades ahead. So, it's critically important that we get those contours right. From the ITIF perspective, we're satisfied that the United States has come back more seriously to the region through its advocacy of IPEF, the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, a framework to lead engagement in the region and across the global economy that is consistent with the critical World Trade Organization tenets that trade should be conducted on private enterprise-led, market-based, rules-governed terms in accordance with the foundational principles of national treatment, non-discrimination, reciprocity, and fairness. There are too many countries in the world today that have architected their economic policies in ways that are not consonant with those visions. And those types of innovation working close policies certainly help those countries that pursue them, but they're very damaging to other countries, to other peoples. And so it is very important in our view that global policymakers from like-minded countries really stand hand in hand to insist that for WTO countries, this is the way trade practices and economic policies must be conducted. Things like industrial subsidies, forced IP theft, forced localization as a conditional market access. These behaviors aren't constant with the global economy. We need to push back on them. So that said, I think we are disappointed with the Biden administration's lack of conviction on trade policy. The fact that America comes to the IPEF table without offering market access or tariff reduction opportunities for US markets is a disappointment. Frankly, the United States should join the Trans-Pacific Partnership and bring other countries in. But if we're not going to do that at this point in time, certainly at least the IPEF is a step in the right direction. And I just want to comment on a couple of the key pillars of the IPEF because I think they are important. and especially the first one, which is on the connected economy, the digital economy. The reality is that researchers at the firm IDC estimate that over the next decade, fully half of the value that gets created in the global economy will get created digitally. It'll be created by the ability to extract actionable insight and intelligence in real time from data. So that means that we need to spend more time as policymakers, focus less on data protection and more on data enablement, data empowerment. Fully 68% of employment growth in developing nations comes from small businesses. How do we empower small businesses to use e-commerce, to trade in digital platforms, to equip individuals inclusively across all countries, across all Indo-Pacific nations, with the ability to take part in this digital revolution? That's got to be a critical point for policymakers. For countries that do enact barriers to data flows, with like local data storage policies, for instance, they can be very damaging. We did a study of Indonesia's economy. We found that Indonesia's local data storage laws for things like healthcare data or financial data actually decreased that country's productivity by 3% a year, increased their prices by nearly 7%, and lowered their GDP growth. We certainly need to be fully respectful of individuals' privacy. We need to have data security, of course, but I think too many countries confuse that the security of data in the digital world isn't defined by where the data is stored. It's defined by the practices that are used to store data securely. So in our view, policymakers need to have more of a bias towards open digital trade with the adequate protections for security and privacy. Also want to touch base on the importance of supply chains. Fully 2/3 of global trade is conducted, or fully 2/3 of GDP is conducted through global supply chains today. So the policies that are proposed in IPEF towards a more resilient economy, working together with like-minded countries in the Indo-Pacific to establish early warning systems on potential disruptions in supply chains, mapping critical mineral supply chains, improving traceability in key sectors, and coordinating diversification efforts are very important. The other pillars of the IPEF focus, of course, on a clean and a fair economy, and it's already been mentioned, the importance, of course, of investment in clean energy technologies and diffusing those technologies throughout our countries. So to summarize those remarks, I do think that although it could be even stronger from the US perspective, to the point earlier that Asia is not only for the nations, it is a constructive effort of the US to engage systematically in a structured way in this region and to set the rules of the road for the global economy going forward through the IPEF. And we hope it's an initiative that gains traction in coming years. Lastly, let me conclude by saying that ITIF leads a somewhat similar form called the Global Trade and Innovation Policy Alliance, the GTIPA. This is a network of 45 like-minded think tanks from across the world, South Africa, South America to Africa to Asia, that have come together to advocate for a positive vision of trade, globalization, and innovation for the benefit of human society. We do have partners throughout the Asia Pacific and in India with CUTS. So we look forward, Bipul, to collaborating activities between GTIPA and atop one another. So thank you for the invitation to be here today. Good luck going forward and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Stephen. Which is to enable everybody, particularly small business, to take advantage of for their sourcing as well as for having better access to consumers. Similarly, for consumers, they are going to have better access, better opportunity to access a variety of sources from the local level to, of course, global level for their needs. So we hope that, and this is very much technology enabled. As you know that this kind of network cannot be done, and we already have other networks in place, particularly this identity card enabled bank accounts for almost everybody in the country. Then UPI, the Universal Payment Initiative, which is now becoming more and more attractive to the outside world as well. So those pillars, they are in place for now coming with this open network for digital commerce. And along with that, we're also going to have account aggregators, which would then enable small businesses, really would enable small businesses to have better access to credit, to have better access to their suppliers on the one hand and consumers on the other hand, so that they don't become subject to only a few big players who are dominant in the market, and they often abuse their dominance. So what I'm saying that I can also see a book in your background called Gulab. So let's not have a digital Gulab as well in this emerging world. So with that, let me once again request our panelists if there are any other thoughts, any afterthoughts after hearing each one of you responding to some of these points, then they are of course very welcome to do that. Otherwise, I would now open the floor for discussion. Anybody can pose their questions by either by typing their questions in the chat box or by raising their hand. So is any panelist would like to add anything? Mr. Ichiro, Dr. Chen? Okay, Sandra, do you have any questions in the chat box? Is there any question in the chat box?
Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, slightly echoing. Yes, carry on.
There is this one question from Shweta.
Yes, carry on.
There is one question from Shweta. She's from Christo JNT College. She's asked a question about impact of ICT penetration on civil society participation in public opinion formation.
So is it directed to any particular person, any particular panelist, or?
It's open to
Okay.
for panelists.
So can you repeat that question? I mean, it was not very clear.
Impact of information technology penetration on civil society participation in public opinion formation.
Okay. So Stephen, can you take it up?
Well, I think certainly that's, you know, the proliferation of, ICTs, both in terms of the physical platforms and the information technology networks, has really created the opportunity to, enable individuals to have, the mechanisms to influence policymakers, to influence through social networks, through social media platforms. We certainly have a considerable amount of work to do globally in the Pacific region. At least 20 to 30% of individuals in the developing world still aren't connected to the internet, for instance. So there's much more we need to do to, to continue to diffuse these technologies for the benefit of humanity. But certainly, forums like this, right? Virtual, online, enabled by digital technology, bring a set of global stakeholders together in real time. Certainly, I think has the transformative power to empower individuals to express their voice in global policy.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Mr. Ichido, or Dr. Chen, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I just have something to complement. I think it's very good that in both the speech and also this question also addressed to these digital tools, ICT development. I think they are very powerful tools. So how to use those tools or under what kind of circumstance use the tool will make a big difference. I think also related to what we talk about this data thing, how you treat the data, and the way you control data. This thing can kind of have an opposite impacts. Many people say that digitalization may kind of promote this decentralization system, but on the other hand, we can see that if used by the different measures, it could be actually strengthen the centralization also. Of course, here, I think related to our discussion so far, we are care about the person, people to people connection, we care about the people's development. I think one thing important is that we make sure to have a regulatory system to make sure those technology kind of serve to promote people's involvement, and as you said, that to kind of offer more opportunity for people to benefit from those new technology. I think that's important. And one related topic is that whether in this Indo-Pacific, we have to kind of trust building among member states. So the one way that you talk about this data, free flow of data, talk about this inclusiveness, use the digital technology, is that you need to trust, right? When you open something, they promise you, we care about your privacy, we care about cybersecurity. They need to have certain degree of trust that, okay, I open this, in exchange, I also benefit from your data. So this trust building is also very much related to this ICT in the region.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's hear from Mr. Ichido if he has anything to add.
Thank you very much. No, I have nothing to add.
Okay, thank you. So there is more of a general question which we have received. What are the ways of civil society organizations can collaborate for a prosperous Indo-Pacific society? Stephen, if you want to throw some lights on that how CSOs, civil society organizations, can collaborate for a more prosperous Indo-Pacific society. And it's over to you. I mean, particularly I would request, given his experience in the government and various other fields, I would also request Mr. Ichido for his thoughts and how civil society organizations can collaborate for a prosperous Indo-Pacific region. Stephen, would you like to add anything?
Well, I think from a structure point of view, you mentioned that you were going to do the monthly newsletter. I think certainly from our perspective, it would be useful for the participating, the CSOs to, maybe share what are their top, 5, priority objectives, policy priorities, that they're trying to advocate for, among governments in these countries. Let's have an exchange of what's at the top of our agendas, so we can see where there's overlapping interest sets and how we can, you collaborate, to hopefully advance those interests. Maybe another way that could be pursued. I know obviously we have strong platforms with the G7, Japan, G20, and India, but as we have CSOs coming from a diversity of countries throughout the region, perhaps there's opportunity to make a collaborative list of key policymakers in each of these countries. So when our think tanks are traveling, or organizations are traveling among the region, then when you're in Indonesia, the Indonesian collaborators helping you meet those policymakers there. When you're in Philippines, vice versa, et cetera. So it could provide a structured environment to facilitate the process of feeding in policy input to key policymakers across the region.
Thank you, Stephen. Now, but here let me add to what I think. I mean, one area where we found that CSOs always struggle is to get the right information and interpretation of those information, particularly on new developments. That's why I think it is important to do networking among the civil society organizations, and so that I may not be aware of certain things. So, but through other network members, I'll be able to get information and knowledge about specific developments which are happening around me. And therefore, networking and time to time uh, uh, capacity building of CSOs. That's very important. I can give you an example with which I was personally involved over the last, about 25 years ago, and I was involved, and that's an evolving initiative. And when the World Trade Organization, WTO, came into being, there is so much of misinformation or disinformation about that institution, about that organization, and its various activities. So we are not sure whether those information are correct or not. Therefore, at the same time, we realize that as a whole, the kind of developments which are taking place in the global trade policy making circle and their agenda, they are going to have a huge impact on the lives of consumers in all countries, from poor countries to developing countries to all developed countries everywhere. But we are unable to take our positions on those subjects, on those topics, because we have less information, less knowledge about the subject. Therefore, we decided, by we mean that a group of like-minded organizations in South Asia region, we decided to set up a network called South Asia Watch on Trade, Economics, and Environment. And now that network is now been formalized, and its headquarters is in Kathmandu in Nepal. And we came up with briefing papers to begin with, very short, 4, 5 page, 6 page briefing papers on on a large number of topics, uh, written in a very simple language, written by experts, but in a very simple language, with that focus on how these issues are going to impact consumers in particular. And secondly, we also organized a capacity building program of members as well as outside, those who are not formally members, but also given their interest. So that's how that network got developed. And I think we are immensely benefited as a result of that. Now I'm talking about late 90s, mid to late 90s. And nowadays, I think with technology as an enabler, I think it's much more easier. At the same time, there are more new challenges which are also appearing on the horizon. So the intention is not to develop a consensus among the network members. I know that it is difficult to develop a consensus or to take a position, but to generate interest, but to impart knowledge, and then let individual organizations, they take their own positions, and when we don't influence or don't force them to take certain positions. There is
You know,
another.
so
Yes.
one thing that we have done with our Global Trade and Innovation Policy Alliance is articulated a set of 10 core principles. That's kind of the guiding foundational document of the members of the alliance. That could be a useful structure for this forum to consider, a declaration or statement of key either principles to be guided by, or even a statement of 10 key policy priorities. So formalizing some of the commonly held beliefs of the organizations within the forum can be a powerful way to collectively amplify the voice.
Hello everyone, am I audible? We also have a few other questions on chat box. One of the questions raised here is on maritime security. If Mr. Fujisaki could reply to this, it would be really great. The question is, maritime security being an important aspect of Indo-Pacific region, how can civil societies join in the region to ensure peace and security?
Dr. Ichiro, sorry, I was on mute earlier. Would you like to take this question about maritime security?
Can you hear me? I'm answering.
Yes, we can hear you.
Maritime security is the core of connecting Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean. Before we were saying Asian Pacific, and now we are starting to say Indo-Pacific because Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean is connected. So maritime security is one of the key issues here. India is a big nation in terms of navy, but also other countries' navy is growing very rapidly, like China. And I think now other countries, like-minded countries, are trying to cooperate in exercises. US, Australia, Japan, India, those quad training, if those exercises can be increased and promoted, I think that would be exactly one of the core issues, which I said about sort of strategic partnership, military security. But so I agree that's one of the most important area. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ichiro. Dr. Rung Chen, who would like to add it on this point about maritime security?
Yeah, sure. I will agree with this Mr. Fujisaki's point that in economy we use the term connectivity to highlight the importance. Either this is ocean transportation or either it's rail transportation. So I think for the country in the region, Indo-Pacific, all the country need to make sure that there's connectivity that can facilitate a connection among each other, to kind of facilitate countries' participation to the global value chains, GVCs. So we think that, so what's the best way to kind of enhance connectivity is that we make sure that this connectivity is based on a peaceful and stable regional and global environment. So what will be the best approach for us is that we try to have a kind of rule-based environment, right? And this rule-based, I think, step one, as we talk about the approach of this forum is that we bring people to talk, communicate, because if we look at history, actually a lot of cases of problem is not real risk or dangers there. It's just because that people or countries that misunderstood each other, right? And to avoid this kind of risk, we try to provide an environment, a circumstance to encourage people to talk, to increase the transparency. I think that's no matter what kind of solution we want to have, this is the step one. And I believe this is also something important to kind of maintain the connectivity of the whole Indo-Pacific. Just let people talk, express their opinion, increase the transparency.
Thank you. Is there any other questions, Sandra?
So there is one question from Pratibha Lokia. The question reads, how can civil society organizations work collectively to address the challenges of climate change, mitigation, and adaptation in the Indo-Pacific region?
Okay, thank you. Anybody who would like to take it up from among the panelists? Stephen?
So our Global Trade and Innovation Policy Alliance will hold our annual summit in Seoul, Korea in late October. And one product that the Alliance will issue at the summit is a report on innovative clean energy, sustainability, renewable solutions that are being produced by entrepreneurs and innovators across all the members of the 45 alliance countries. So that would be an interesting platform to be able to highlight and profile a great deal of innovative solutions being developed from Chile to Honduras to Bangladesh and India, right? So that's one way that we can collaborate on climate change issues, is by exchanging knowledge about the good technologies and practices that are being developed across the world, what's working where, and how can those types of solutions be adopted by other countries.
Right. Thank you. Any other questions, Sandra? Is there any other question? I think I didn't answer, I was on mute, unfortunately. I didn't answer that question on accountability. Yeah. The question is, what about the accountability of civil society organizations? Since, as a lot of cases suggest, corruption is still widespread in Asia-Pacific region, for that matter, not just this region, all over the world. And CSOs are particularly not particularly immune to it. Yeah, absolutely. And isn't there a need to hold CSOs accountable to the communities they serve? Absolutely. I mean, I completely agree with you. CSOs, civil society organizations, they usually ask for, demand for accountability of other stakeholders, particularly the government, public sector, private sector, media, and various other stakeholder groups, which is absolutely fine. At the same time, you have to also understand that CSOs, they themselves have to be accountable, and there are various means of checking that accountability. I think it has to be a two-way process between CSOs and other stakeholders, and by becoming more and more accountable, I think there'll be more buy-in then of what we are advocating for. So in order to see to it that our policy advocacy efforts become, particularly policy advocacy efforts, become more successful, I think we have to be more accountable to the stakeholders on the one hand, which we're serving, as well as to other players who we think that they should also be accountable. Any other questions, Sandra?
Sir, no more questions.
Okay, so thank you very much. I think it was quite a good discussion on various points. As I said in the beginning, it's just a small step towards the launch of this initiative. And as we move forward, I think this is going to gain more traction and more momentum. And we also need to see that how this civil society forum can work around the issues. I won't use the word can tag along around various developments which are taking place in the region, but can work around the issues which are important for this region. I see that there is one more message. Let me see. There is a message from Stephen for more information. Yeah, this is the right thing. Global Trade and Innovation Policy Alliance. That's the member of that. And I see that the other members were also present in today's discussion. So thank you very much, Stephen, for that. Let me also thank Mr. Ichiro Furisaki and also Dr. Durham Chen once again for their participation in this launch event. We're going to circulate a brief report of this, and I think with that, this initiative is going to get more traction, more momentum going forward. Our intention is that sometime in next year, we should organize a more formal, more bigger launch event sometime around the G20 summit, which is going to take place in India in 2023. So with that, let me once again...
Thank you very much. It was a great honor to have been able to have a chance to participate in this first meeting. We enjoyed the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
All the
sir.
best.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
let me now hand it over to my colleague Sandra for a brief vote of thanks. And we are also going to have a curtain raiser as a semi-formal launch, let me put it this way. Over to you, Sandra.
Thank you, sir. I express my sincere gratitude to the moderator and all the panelists for your valuable insights and timely discussion on civil society's role in the Indo-Pacific region. Now we will have the official launch of the forum with a digital curtain raiser by Mr. Bipul.
Thank you. So let's be in touch. Once again, I express my gratitude to all of you for taking part in this initiative, in this discussion. And with your support, together, we are going to take it forward. Thank you.